The information provided in this podcast is for general knowledge and informational purposes only. It does not constitute medical advice. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional for diagnosis and treatment of any medical condition. The views and opinions expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Unplugged Healthcast or Dr. Wall.
But I would say anxiety we experience in the absence of love.
Yeah.
So does it exist cold and dark and anxiety? They are powerful, and I think they're real, but I think they're indicators of an absence of something. And to be alone and cold and feeling overwhelmed, that's real pain.
Neck pain, backaches, headaches, fatigue, the list goes on, and you're likely on it. Tired of the broken system and big pharma? We offer logical solutions, teach you to think critically, and empower you to reclaim your health. Welcome to the Unplugged Healthcast with Dr. Kevin Wall.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unplugged Healthcast. It's time to wake up. It's time to stop taking the Ambien. I am not Keanu Reeves, but this is the Unplugged Healthcast, where we're going to unplug you from the Matrix so you can see clearly. I have one of the wisest friends, guys I know, people I know, doctors I know as a guest. I'm going to be excited for you guys to hear and listen to his wisdom. We're going to take a caller. We're going to talk about a very difficult topic that is actually probably one of the most searched viral topics, and it's anxiety. In fact, right now it is the number one diagnosed mental health care disorder in America. 25% of females deal with it, 20% of males. More prevalent in the younger, more prevalent in women, surprisingly more prevalent in people that have never been married. And the crazy news is that only 36% of people actually ever try to treat it. And majority of these conditions, this diagnosis, can actually be reversed and dealt with. In fact, today, as we talk about the Unplugged Healthcast, our concept, of course, is to give you ideas and ways that you could really be healthy for a lifetime. And to do that, you got to consider Big Pharma is probably not your best friend for a lifetime. Short term, I get it, but if we're taking Ambien, Lexapro, if we're taking Nexium, if we're ibuprofen every day, all day long, we're going to kill our plants. We're not going to make healthy ferns, and we aren't going to get healthy humans out of it as well. The reality is feeling has nothing to do with function. Does that make sense? Feeling is not function. Most people get so tied up in their feelings of whether it's pain or discomfort or stomach issues or whatever. The feelings you have often have nothing to do with the functional problems or are very bad indicators of them. In fact, we always say pain is the last thing to show, the first thing to go. Only 12 to 15% of all the nerves in your body can actually even feel pain or discomfort. Because majority of those, 85% of the nerves in your body make your body function. We need to focus on function, not feeling, like how you're sleeping, how you're eating, how you're digesting, how are you eliminating, right? How are things going in the bathroom? Those are strange conversations, but they're better indications than the pain that you're waiting for, because when the pain shows up in the tooth, you are often ready for a root canal, and the dentist will tell you it wasn't the bowl of ice cream last night, right? It was the bowls. And so today we're going to talk about the bowls. We're definitely going to talk about feelings. In fact, if you would you let me bring in and introduce a good friend of mine, Dr. Don Worcester. And Don, I'm not going to try to pretend that I know all of your credentials, although I should. And you wrote them out very lengthy for me. There's so many that I'm going to hit the highlights. Dude, you've been doing stuff. You're the wisest guy I know, and I'm not joking about this just because you're on the show. And here's why. There's a difference between information, intelligence, and wisdom has a tendency to have dust on it. And if I take you all back with me and remind Don was my wife's young life leader. He was counseling kids when he was in high school. He then went into a place called Ramita Ranch where he worked with, I think, bulimic young females mostly. And man, that is that's in the trenches. You continued to work with that. You moved into a licensed professional counselor, did that for many years, then said, I got to do more, became a Ph.D. Now I know you're working with a variation of different groups, marriage counseling. If you would, can you say hi, and what did I miss?
Yeah, thanks for pointing out what an old guy I am. I appreciate that.
Well, I found someone maybe my age to invite on the show.
It's true. And you know what? Along the way, I've had a chance to work in a lot of different places and do some educational training. And there's some advantage in being able to have lots of conversations with people. And I think some of those conversations are really important. And I think culturally, they can kind of get shuffled around and
100%. They take too long. You know, they take too long sometimes, and a bride prescription doesn't take more than a few minutes. And so I think we're getting shuffled along with it, aren't we?
Yeah, I think sometimes fast and efficient is not necessarily effective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And if you can distill things down to, here's the problem, here's the pill, that's a very efficient solution.
System.
But whether something is efficient doesn't mean it's effective.
100%.
And it doesn't mean it's bringing health or wholeness. It might be doing some symptom reduction.
Yeah.
But I think that can set up a very, unproductive cycle too.
Yeah, it's definitely the core of this podcast, and the reason that I'm doing this after 35 years of just watching this in the trenches and seeing the chronic epidemic of illness and pharmacology just killing it. Financially, they're killing it, but our health we're in the third world nation right now. Either way, but before we get too deep in the weeds, I no one gets out of here without the rapid fire questions. I got to get to know you. I say in a joke that people don't think doctors are real people. Did you know that? And I know
I'm discovering it right now. Yeah.
Well, here's some simple questions. People can get to know you. Things maybe I don't even know. First one is where are you from? Were you born? How'd you get here?
I was born. I'm completely guilty of that. Yeah, I was actually born in Utica, New York. And spent the first few years out there, and then my family relocated to Arizona, and I grew up in Arizona. I'm one of about 6 people that lived here at the time. Pretty great place to.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the only place right now isn't either on fire or has snow drifts. Right?
Oh my God.
It's a little great. Best food place that you've ever inhabited or sport. You can pick one, or you can do all 3.
I'll tell you what I've loved since college. Chino Bandino.
Okay.
Chino Bandino. It's on 3rd Avenue and Bell if you're local. And Chino Bandino is a combination of Mexican and Chinese food in a fusion.
Wow.
And so you can get Chinese dishes, traditional Chinese dishes, but you can have them into a quesadilla, or you can have them served with jerk.
What's it called again?
Chino Bandino.
Chino Bandino. Okay, number 3, your superpower is my favorite question. Everyone knows if they've been around me. What is your superpower?
What is my superpower? That's a great question. I would say I think people are incredibly fascinating and interesting.
So curiosity?
I'm curious when I meet people, and it just kind of, I go, what? You got to tell me more about that. And for some people, that seems like, what in the world is going on there? And that's overwhelming. And I've gotten to meet lots of different people.
Love that.
And I just find them fascinating.
Yeah. My classic line nowadays, and it catches everybody off guard. I walk up, and rather than saying, how are you? I go, tell me, what's your story? And everyone sits back. I have no idea what to say. What do you mean, what's my story? What's your story? Everybody's got a story, right? The most impactful, redundant, reoccurring, vital piece of advice you give to patients on more. There's one thing you probably routinely tell a lot of people. What is that one thing? Because a lot of people want to hear it.
I find myself telling people quite a bit, you're never going to be in a relationship that's healthier than you are.
Wow.
So pay attention to you, because you take you everywhere you go.
That, I hope you guys, if we just quit the podcast today, I bet we would help a few right there. But let's keep going. We're going to tiptoe into this, and I say tiptoe because it is a touchy topic. And anxiety, most people, as I have said, and I own a mental health center. You know the guys that I partner with.
Great
on
guys.
that. Mental Health Centers of America, phenomenal location, phenomenal practitioners. And we look at health from a holistic and mental health care perspective.
Yeah.
Today, we're going to talk about some of that, but we're going to leave it free for you to throw whatever you want out there. But I do have a thought, a statement I've heard. I'm curious your thoughts, and it'll get us started. People say that anxiety is not an emotion. They say there's mad, glad, sad, or a variation of fear, or I'm afraid, and everything is just an up or down volume of those four things. Is anxiety really an emotion, or is that statement true? What would you think? What would you say?
Yeah. Well, they say that according to the physicist, darkness isn't a thing. Darkness is the word we use to describe the absence of light. There's no such thing as dark. Cold doesn't exist. According to the smart physicist I know, cold is the word we used to describe an absence of heat. And I would say anxiety, if you want to put it in that category, to go, yeah, it doesn't exist. But I would say anxiety we experience in the absence of love.
Yeah.
So does it exist? Cold and dark and anxiety, they are powerful. And I think they're real, but I think they're indicators of an absence of something. And to be alone and cold and feeling overwhelmed, that's real pain. That's real hurt. And I think we've done so many things, and we have more research and pharmaceuticals, and yet the numbers on college campuses and on the general population haven't had an impact that seems to be going in a different direction.
Yeah, I keep saying that we're chasing the wrong rabbits down the wrong holes. There's got to be a different way to think about and go about that. A couple of questions I hear often, and some of our callers ask, and they, I got a survey on things that they would want to know. One was just, what's the difference between just a lot of worry and being anxious or having anxiety, or actually what's the again, I think because only 36% of people actually ever get it treated, I picture the other 64% are sitting around going, I don't have it maybe, or it isn't really that bad, or next thing you know, like a health problem, it turns into a heart attack, but not until then they're going to look at it. Where's the level? What's the category? Where's the lines?
Yeah, I'd say anxiety requires imagination. You can only worry about things that haven't happened yet.
Wow.
You're projecting, you're creating an image in your mind about a possibility, and creating an image in your mind has consequences. Your image, your brain doesn't necessarily completely distinguish between a thing that's happening, between an image that it's seeing, or between a thought that you're creating, which is another kind of imagination. And when you show yourself scary images, when you go into the future and you put on, I think of anxiety as kind of the Oculus virtual reality glasses.
Yeah.
You put those virtual reality glasses on, and it feels real. And, over Christmas, we had some family that put those on, and you could see on the screen what they were seeing with their glasses. Yeah. But I want to tell you, the people in the living room, in a completely safe environment, when they put those glasses on, there was involuntary cussing. There was major heart rates. There was sweating. There was real physiological expression. And they, quote unquote, knew they were in the living room.
Wow.
But those images created a real physiological difference. And I would say the images that we look at are powerful. And when we are creating these imaginary futures, they will have real impact. And, when you have the Oculus glasses on, that it's virtual reality.
Yeah.
If we could take anxiety off, because once you take the virtual reality glasses off, you go, oh, I'm here. I'm okay. It's harder to take off the anxiety than it is the glasses.
I think everything you're saying has a ton of wisdom. I always know it does. And I think people are relating to it and understanding it. But how do they may be saying, how do I take the glasses off? Like, a lot of times our people are taking medications because it seems to make you think the glasses are off. until you stop taking the medications,
Yeah.
and then you realize they're still there.
Right. And I'm thankful for medications that can disrupt that kind of absolute catastrophic feeling. And sometimes those are absolutely appropriate and helpful. If you jump in a cold plunge, you'll stop a panic attack.
Yeah.
Because your brain and your body will suddenly not have the ability to worry about what it was worrying about, because it will be extremely cold and it will be present tense. It's hard to worry when you're present. And getting present, a cold plunge will put you in the present tense. I took several this week, and try to think about something or try to be worried when you're in a cold plunge, and let me know if you can pull it off. But it puts you in the present. What's going on right now? Anything that centers you, any of your senses that can center you, will break up that anxiety storm. When my son was 10, my wife was traveling back east. Hurricane Sandy was happening on the news, and her and some other crazy friends were driving into it to go to this conference. And I'm watching the Weather Channel, and that storm was several hundred miles wide. And my son looked at it. He was about 8 or 10. He goes, "Dad, what kind of engine is in the middle of that storm?" Because 150 mile an hour winds. And I go, "There's no engine." He goes, "Dad, come on. You can't make 150 mile an hour, winds across several hundred miles. There's got to be an engine. What's in the center? What's driving it?" And I said, "Absolutely nothing. A vacuum. In the middle of every anxiety storm is a vacuum. But it's swirling, and it gains as it swirls. And when hot and cold wear hooks and spins, it gains more. And as it spins, it gets, powerful because it's on a flat surface and nothing's disrupting it. And that's happening inside of your brain. And if you can reallocate and make your brain pay attention to things, when those hurricanes or tornadoes hit surfaces, it slows down. But in the middle of anxiety is nothing.
That's a great illustration. I just went back. My daughter loves that new movie, Twister. I don't know if you've seen it.
I haven't seen it yet, but the original was awesome.
Well, same concept, so you don't maybe need to watch it. Pretty good acting, but either way, same story. But to fix the Twister is they have to send something in the middle of nothing and to disrupt the whole system, and then it just diffuses it. So I think if our crowd, our audience, and anyone listening could picture that, it doesn't always have to be something exact. It doesn't have to be something that John did or helped Larry. It could be something maybe, but of course, I think it has to be healthy. It has to be things like exercise, things, going and volunteering and going and spending your time and energy to help others. Often we get so worried about our circumstance, and our circumstance looks pretty good when we go see others' circumstance. In fact, it's strange, but I was talking on depression on one of our shows, and we only see suicide at the highest ratios where people seem to have more than they need, and you don't find it in the third world nations. That's right. Kind of picture anxiety may be similar.
Well, once you get stuck in that loop, anything that helps you reallocate that to go, I'm spinning, and because I'm spinning, it's getting bigger and bigger. And being able to redirect yourself out of that to get your brain and emotionally to go, I've got to pay attention to this. And as you pay attention to that, it takes some of the energy away. So a lot of the things with breathing, getting your breathing regulated, a lot of being physically aware, movement, there's a lot of very practical things, but anything that involves your senses getting back to an active place. Those senses are all getting hijacked.
Yeah.
And they're creating a pretty bad system, and being able to go, hey, the part of what can add to it is that we get anxious that we're anxious.
Yeah.
And part of being able to go, oh, you know what? Somebody pulled an alarm inside of my body. The alarm is real, but you can also go when it's an anxiety, it's not dangerous, but it's anxiety. You can also kind of go, wow, that alarm is really loud. You can also go, you know what though? It's a false alarm.
Yeah.
I worked at the university for a period of time, and I oversaw residence halls. There's a 15-story residence hall that I was at one point kind of supervising. And as a prank, the Sometimes the students would go and pull the alarm. It's 15 stories. The elevator locks up.
A lot of college kids.
That means you got to have, there's 1,000, at that point, there was 1,000 freshman women in that residence hall.
Oh, goodness.
And they all had to exit the building at, 2 a.m. because some goofball pulled the alarm. And the first time it happened, holy cow. I mean, you get screaming, you get all the rest of that. The second or third time it happens, some of those people start to go, it's an alarm, it's loud. It's false alarm.
Yeah.
I'm not in danger. It's disruptive. I got to leave the building. But anxiety versus an actual warning sign of something is really a false alarm. And being able to go, oh yeah, man, my thoughts are racing, my hands are shaking. There's about 25 different things anxiety does in your body. And you go, oh yeah, that's because there's this false alarm going off. But it's false alarm. I'm not in danger. My body's just kind of, doing what it's doing right now.
All right. Well, I think we've already got a few things that all of us could use. Myself, I'm learning. I haven't visually pictured the vacuum like that, but it makes 100% sense. The old analogy or where fear is just false evidence appearing real, right? That's kind of almost the basis of that. Yeah. It's often what we're anxious about, what we're fearing is something that truly is nothing most of the time and very few things. So, all right, well, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back, and we got a caller unscripted. We got a young man that I know is dealing with some of the stuff, and we're going to just chat with him and see if we can help in some fashion. We'll see you in just a minute.
After an injury, it can feel like life's on hold, but at AFC, we're here to help you get back to what matters. With personalized injury plans and our expert staff, we don't just treat the pain, we guide you back to strength and confidence. Because getting back isn't just about healing, it's about thriving. Call us or visit our website to start your journey today.
All right, we're back. Welcome to the Unplugged Healthcast. We have got a caller on the line. His name is Zay, and he's dealing with some mental maybe struggles of sort. One thing I want to just take a moment, because I haven't talked today, but there are over 200 medications today that actually have the side effect of either anxiety or depression. My point is often we have side effects we don't always relate, and often when people have physical problems, it can affect their mental issue. But let's bring Zay in. Zay, are you there?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
All right. Well, again, thank you for your time there. And if you could, what would be the number one thing we could possibly help you with in your mental health journey?
It'll probably be like the up and down, like my depression. It's either I have like days of really extreme highs, but then when the low comes, it's really extreme lows, and I'm in a slump.
Gotcha.
So I would love to learn how to manage when I get in the slump, like some coping skills to get me out of it.
That's awesome. And I know a lot of people, again, that's not awesome you're having it, but that's awesome you're willing to share, because a lot of people can relate with you, can understand that, and you're going to help people by sharing. But if you don't mind, I'm going to ask a few questions before we bring Dr. Don in. What's the first time you ever noticed any of this happening where the ups and downs were obvious to you?
Probably about in my mid-20s. I'm 36 now.
Okay, so 10, 11 years ago. If we could take you back to that time period, often I found, and we may not find it, but I'm curious, prior to that time, maybe when you were in your lower 20s or teens, did you ever have physical injuries? Have you ever had problems, pain issues relative prior to having some of these mental struggles?
No, but I was shot in a drive-by shooting at the age of 14, so I struggled from a little bit of PTSD, like I was afraid to go outside. I was real reclusive for a while, and just that fear of like present danger. Sometimes I think they correlate that to anxiety. I experienced that a lot, so
that goes back to maybe even 14. Where, if you don't mind me asking, where were you shot?
In my left thigh.
Okay. And right now that seems to have healed up?
Yes.
And are you on any medications for either pain or any type or mental health of any sort?
No, but I took a cocktail medications throughout my life.
Okay. All right. Well, let's do this, Don. Dr. Don, you got any thoughts or questions you'd like to ask?
I would just say, Zay, what would you say overall? What would you say about your sleeping? It's just as far as what does that look like on a on a regular basis?
My sleeping is trouble. Like I stay up probably till like 1 o'clock every day. And even though I got to get up around 6:57, and I always tell myself every night I'm going to go to sleep early, but it's like a little bit of restlessness, to say the least.
Yeah. Well, sleep is really important. And if it gets disrupted, a lot of the REM sleep that would normally happen where your brain is clearing out some of the stress and some of the other things that have gotten recorded, you don't get through all those cycles. And so if your sleep process, and sometimes that's because we're active, we're watching television, or we're kind of doing things, or our bodies get out of that cycle. And I would say anything you can do to begin regulating that. There have been some programs, some people that are very unregulated, they go out camping for 3 days. And when it gets dark and there's, if you're camping, you won't get any melatonin, you'll actually start to fall asleep. And when the sun comes up in the morning, you'll kind of wake up. But getting regulated, making sure those, if you have computer screens or blue light that are keeping you awake, sleep is really important in terms of emotional management. And I would say any patterns you can get in that will help that would be good. In terms of your eating, what would you say? How do you eat throughout the day?
I would say normal.
Okay.
I think I have a big appetite. I'm kind of like a 2 meal a day.
Okay. Okay.
Big breakfast and a big dinner.
Okay. Yeah, I would just say blood sugar has a lot to do with your ability to think and a lot of ability to regulate emotions. Your body would really like if you could keep it pretty even, which those bigger meals are okay, but man, it really likes when blood sugar is even. If it's possible to kind of, maybe try to keep that even. So maybe there's a little snack or maybe there's something different, but when it drops way down and then goes way up, the emotional regulation's much tougher when that's going on. So I would say regulation around that. In terms of being outdoors or moving, what would you say in that part of your life?
I'm not really outdoors too much.
Yeah.
I'm not really outdoors at all.
Yeah. There's a lot of research that anytime we can get into a natural green space, there's a lot of lowering stress, lowering anxiety when we can get into a green space, a park or something else. If you're moving in a green space, there's a whole bunch of good things that happen in terms of just emotional regulation. And I would say a blue sky or a green space, if there's a park, if there's a place, if you can go walk a dog. But if you're staying inside and the sleep is a little irregular and maybe your eating isn't evened out, it's probably going to make that all of those things a little bit harder. And I would say to maybe just experiment a little bit to see what those kinds of things will do. But if we're not regulated, it can become really pretty challenging to figure out, wow, I'm going up and I'm down and I'm doing okay. But I would say those would be some places that I would start. Do you have anybody that you talk about your life with that you're connected to, that you're friends with? Anybody in that range?
Yeah, I got a best friend.
Okay.
Of about 5 years, and we talk about the innies and everything's life. But I do have a question when it comes to emotional regulation and environment. Does water play a part? It was suggested to me by a friend that, if I'm stressed out or anything, go near water, a lake or a pond. Does that play a part in anything?
Outdoor things in green spaces or water have really powerful effects on lowering anxiety. That's pretty consistent. If you can get into a green space, some research shows if you can get into a green space for 4 or 5 hours, it'll lower cortisol levels and other stress chemicals in your body for up to 3 or 4 days. So it's very good medicine. Exercise and stretching kind of has the same sort of regulation. If you can do that outside, it doesn't have the side effects and it doesn't have the other things, and our bodies are kind of meant to have their senses activated, to be outdoors, to move, to connect. You've got a friend that you're talking to. That's really great. But getting regulated will kind of give you a foundation that will allow those things to happen. And those would be some things that I would say, and I bet Kevin has some ideas on that too.
Well, I appreciate you throwing it back to me. I surely don't want to steal your thunder because that's some great stuff. But what is unique about what he said, and it surely wasn't scripted, is the whole principle of our podcast. And one of the basic things I talk about is that health isn't that complicated. And Zay, it's really not even that complicated for you. Sometimes we kind of make it complicated. That I said, if you were growing plants in a nursery or a farmer, you would give it food, water, and sunlight, right? And that's about it. And basically what you just described to him was food, water, and sunlight, and done in the correct amounts at the correct time, right? You don't have all the sunlight for 72 hours and then all the food for 72 hours, and then let's wait for rain and do that once a year, right? There's a rhythm to life. And when you can find your rhythm and you can stick on the principles that are really logical, which means if you're eating Taco Bell and you're eating McDonald's and if you're eating chips and you're not getting good proteins and good carbohydrates and good fats in your diet, and then you're wondering maybe why your ferns are a little weird looking, a little wilty, leaning to the left and not producing much fruit. I don't know, do ferns produce fruit?
Sure they do.
Yeah, okay, let's go with that because it's working with my analogy. Yeah. But anyway, Zay, I hope this was helpful for you. We're going to have to move on with the call today. I appreciate your time. I hope you got something out of it. I know what you did, though, and I want to thank you for it as you shed light for other people that were listening and are listening and will listen to this. So thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your time and your concerns with us. You have a blessed day today.
All right. Thank you guys so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Zay.
You're more than welcome. All right. Well, Doc, just like I figured, brilliant again. What's unique about this podcast is that we have real people with real concerns and we come up with real solutions. You can't fabricate, you can't make it up. You can make a lecture on how to be healthy, but honestly, sometimes you just got to get a conversation going and people can relate to that. But I'm going to throw one last conversation, and we've got a few more minutes, and your time is valuable, and I know we got to get you going here. But there was a perspective I have, and I've heard, and I think it may even, who knows, it could have came from you because I've had an opportunity to hang out with you for a few years as a friend, and even as you being our counselor for our family, that has been such a blessing. Thank you for that. Is that this perspective where people have, and you said something to it, where they have this blueprint of their life that they kind of set in their mind. And often that blueprint starts early. Sometimes it's given to us by our parents. Sometimes it's given to us by our professors. And sometimes we just create this blueprint of how life is supposed to go. And when life goes close to that blueprint, then things seem to be okay. The anxiety, depression seem to be less. And I got to say that I struggle with relating to anxiety to depression because I don't really have much of it. And it surely doesn't mean it's not real and I can't empathize with it because I can understand. And I've just been blessed with a great parents, a great wife, kids that love and care and try, and people around me. And not everybody gets that. But then we go into kids, and then then you have a blueprint for the kids, and it's not even their blueprint, and you're hoping they follow your blueprint, and this seems to be like just a perfect recipe for the perfect storm. Do you want to elaborate on that? I think I've heard you say something to that category even earlier today.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we don't make some room for the fact that this is a messy process.
Yeah.
And we're going to be surprised sometimes. We're going to be discouraged sometimes. We're sometimes going to get to the place to go, I'm not 100% sure the next thing I should do. And if we can give ourselves enough grace and room to go, I don't know right now, and that's okay.
Yeah.
To let ourselves kind of go, I'm going to get a resource. I'm going to ask somebody. I'm going to figure it out. But right now, I don't think I know. If we can tell ourselves the truth, that this is a new situation or a hard situation, if we can tell ourselves the truth, there's a lot of freedom in that.
Yeah.
If we tell ourselves we're supposed to know everything, we're supposed to have a fix for everything, we're supposed to have a solution for everything, that is a lot of pressure.
Wow.
And eventually life will expose us.
Yeah.
To go, you're not really sure. And to be able to go, I'm not. But there are great people in life. There's somebody that knows. I can ask somebody to go, I'm kind of stuck here. Could you give me a little perspective? Am I thinking about this the right way? I don't think we're designed as humans to figure everything out by ourselves.
Yeah.
I think we're built for community. I think we're built for perspective. And if we get too isolated, and all we're doing is cycling and recycling our hurts and hopes and histories, we can get stuck on a track that we cycle and we cycle and we cycle, and then we kind of go, wow, this is reality. Well, you know, if you're on a certain track, my oldest son loved electric trains from the time he was 2 years old. And so we got these little HO trains, and we got this little starter oval. And there was a certain point where he just goes, Dad, I love this, but can I get a bigger track? And with electric trains, you have to go to the store and you have to get a switch track. And a switch track has this little impulse that it fits in on the oval. But if you hit the current, it just will shift and it will put you onto a bigger track.
Mm.
And without that shift track, you're just looping.
Yeah.
And I think some of us get on these loops, and no matter how long you're on it, no matter how fast you go, I'm back here again. How did I get back here? And you go, yeah, I'm on this loop. And I think I believe that if we have conversations, if we're open to it, to go, I'm looking for a switch track. I'm looking for something that I could just pivot. It doesn't have to be reorder my whole life, but it just shifts enough to put me onto this larger capacity. And I think some of the things that you've talked about, some of the things I've heard you do in your practice and your profession, you're helping people think about things, not just with a little bump like you'll feel better, but a shift in how they think about it, right? Not just medication is very good at relieving our symptoms. But, you know, the Greek word therapian is the word we use for therapeutic, and it means to bring health.
Yeah.
And the original Greek idea was that we're bringing health. And I think that that's still, I would say, is what we're looking for. What's bringing health? What's bringing wholeness? If we're just managing symptoms and reducing things, symptom management in itself doesn't bring health.
No.
We're just on a track. I think the things that you guys embrace and talk about to go, is there a switch that could open us to a bigger life, healthy, whole, honest, connected? That's true physically, that's true emotionally, that's true mentally, that's true spiritually. Could we get on a bigger track? Could we have something that allows us to feel connected? And it's honest, it's imperfect, it's in process, but it's real.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think, rather than talking more, I think I'm going to finish with that, because if they could just really implement some of those concepts, a little switch, just a slight deviation, there is no doubt that the redundancy of life is often the part that creates sadness and gladness and madness and fear.
Yeah.
And to bring it back, whether anxiety is a defined real emotion, it's definitely a real feeling. And like I started this conversation, that the feeling is real, but the problem is probably not exactly where you think it's at. Kind of what you see is what you get. It really doesn't work here. What you feel is not what you get either. So we would ask that you would consider looking past the symptom and to look to the redundancy, the cycle, the repetitive thing you're on, the fact that, you're stuck somewhere and you just need a small deviation. It just leans so much into this podcast, and what we're talking about is what's important. So slight shift, and the same thing gets you the same results. So let's try something new, and let's try it now. All right. Well, thanks for joining us today on the Unplugged Healthcast. Hey, if you want to find out more information on Dr. Don and his company and business and his site, you'll find it on our website at drkevinwall.com. Dr. Don, if they just want to find you personally and connect with you in some fashion, is there a way for them to do that?
Our little local website is truenorthweb.org. My wife and I we have a nonprofit. We do a lot of relational marriage work. And all of that information, relationship, is at donandrenee.com.
All right. And I've heard some phenomenal stuff about that. Those are kind of marriage counseling. And
yeah,
some sort of
marriage and relationship work. Wow. And we jump in, and they're very fun and very active, and we see really good things happen.
Wow. We could do a whole podcast or a week of podcast on that, relationships and marriage. Today we won't do it. But if you want to find out more, which you should, you need to go to truenorthweb.org. It'll be in the show notes, everything you can do, you can find to get help. But the one thing you can't do, the one thing you shouldn't do, the one thing you got to stop doing is nothing.
Yes.
And just doing the same, and or just cycle. Get off the track. This is my recommendation. Dr. Don's as well. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Unplugged Healthcast.